Starting with why is always, I feel like, paramount and crucial. Regrets, no. Are there things that I would do differently? Yes. At the end of the day, nothing is that important. You're on the other side of the world in a Tahoe, there's nobody around, and you're just driving through the middle of the desert. And it's just like, this is so weird. You get to do whatever you want to. And then it turns into, you get to do whatever you want to. If you're in a position that you don't know what to do, first and foremost, be still and listen. And understand that in the being still, you are taking action.
What's up, guys? Lift and Love. Lift and Love here. Where did you pull this question from? Why is that? Lift Love. Crochet. We out. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Lifting Love podcast. You are awesome, and today's episode is brought to you by Lake Hickory Pub and Marina, where lake and life meet. Today's episode guest is a friend of mine, a recently known friend who apparently I've met before, and I didn't even know it back 6-7 months ago.
It happens.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Adam Sides. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Lenny. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing so good. So right before we got on, we kind of just jumped into it. We had like a pre-podcast before the podcast.
Isn't that every conversation with you?
It feels like it. I'm not gonna lie. It literally, like I told you, we had a conversation last week. It feels like every time I sit down with someone, it's a whole podcast because sometimes it goes super in depth and it's weird. But anyway, I want to talk about you.
Okay.
You have a million titles, like we were talking about before. You were in the service. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So you're a veteran. You are with Hickory for Vets.
Yep.
You were just talking before. You help with another nonprofit. Like, you have all these different titles.
Mm-hmm.
So for people who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
I don't have an answer to that. I do whatever feeds my purpose. And as long as I'm feeding my purpose, then I'm happy and I'm fulfilled. So sometimes that's working with HKY for Vets. Sometimes it's working at a veterans home where I volunteer. Sometimes it's working and doing nothing and just being in the woods playing in my Jeep. But it's always new and it's on my terms. I spent 25 years in the military doing stuff on someone else's terms. So now it's my turn.
So if we could take it back before we get to where you are now. What did you always want to be in the service, or is there like a specific story where you were like, hey, this is what I'm going to do? Or did you always like kind of feel called to it?
No, I absolutely did not feel called. This is hilarious. So I had been accepted to UNCG. I was going to go to college in Greensboro. I was hoping to study music. I sang in choir in high school. Really enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah.
Had already been accepted, had already had already got my housing assignment and everything like that. And then my mom asked me one day, she said, son, how you going to pay for it?
Oh.
And I said, what do you mean, Mama? She said, I suggest you call this guy right here. And she handed me a recruiter's phone number.
Wow.
So that was it. Like, it was never on my radar. I'd never planned on it. But it worked out.
Do you think she secretly had that in the back of her mind of my son's going to go to the military to get his school paid for?
I think she was just trying to pacify me.
Hey.
At the end of the day, I think she was just trying to, help me figure out what my next step was, and she knew that was a way that I could get to school. Yeah. Fast forward, I never went to UNCG. I never studied music. But I did end up getting a couple of degrees, but I did it as I was older, and I appreciate it a lot more now because I think you learn better as an adult, and especially when it's your dime and your sacrifice versus, your parents sending you to school when you're 22, 23, whatever.
So you went right into the service after you had that conversation with the person she gave you the card for?
Yeah, so the first 6 years I was regular National Guard.
Okay.
And then, and I talked about it in my retirement speech. Actually, I had a nexus moment. So And I define nexus moment by, if there's a moment in your life that altered or changed the direction, like what was that moment or who was that person? And for me, it was a guy that I was working with in the Guard. I was working in Charlotte as a IT guy for a company, and he called me one day and he said, actually, that's a lie. I'm going to back up because it was back when I was at E4 getting ready to make E5. Me and my buddy Tim Collins both received offers, but it was going to require us to travel to Thomasville for what we call drill, right? Or our training sessions or whatever for the normal weekend. So it was one of those deals, it's like, if you go, I'll go. And so we both decided to go. And then that led us to meet Brian Pruitt. And so that is my nexus point of life. Meeting him altered the trajectory of my life. Because that's where he's the one that called and said, hey, Adam, I think you should apply for this job. I think you'd be a really good candidate. And it was just out of the blue. Wasn't even planning on going full-time into the Guard.
So your plan up until this point was to just do what you were doing, stay the course, or was there like an exit plan and then you jumped full time? Or like what were you looking at those next couple of years being before you got this opportunity?
I think I was looking to climb the IT ladder.
Okay. Inside or outside of the military?
Outside.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure outside. I was an artilleryman when I first started, so
Gotcha.
I got to blow stuff up, which was pretty cool.
Hold on. I have to ask, how do you go from blowing stuff up to IT?
You'd be amazed at how much technology goes into blowing something up.
You're definitely right. Like, the button needs to work to be able to blow stuff up.
Right. But yeah, so that was my deal, and the company that I was at, they absolutely supported me, and they wanted to give me more responsibility, but this was back early 2000s, so there had already been a deployment where I was mobilized, so I was away from my regular work for almost 24 months. Wow. So I get back to my regular job, and I'm like, hey, I'm ready. Like, give me some more responsibility. And they're like, we would love to, but, with your military commitment, it's kind of hard because we don't know if you're going to be here or this or that. And I certainly understood.
Yeah.
And all of this, just kind of like a synchronicity, all came up together. And it was within a couple weeks that my buddy called, and he was like, hey, I think you should apply for this job. And then here I am, 43 years old, now retired, and getting a paycheck for the rest of my life.
What do you think? So I'm big on reflecting. I like to reflect, especially now. I just had a baby, all this stuff. So I've been really reflective the past couple months, and that's just the season of life that I'm in. Do you think, what do you think would have been different if you would, you obviously probably still would be working at that job, but what do you think would be different now if you would have stayed and just not went full time with the service?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Because the private sector's great, and you probably would have made a great amount of money and all this stuff, especially now with the advancements in technology. But do you think that you would be in a better position?
I absolutely do not think I would be in a better position. The stuff that I learned and the people that I met along the way and the experiences that I had made me who I am. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that stuff happens by accident.
For sure.
And at the end of the day, we're the sum of all of our parts. So I wouldn't be sitting here with you today had I not made that decision back in 2006.
Wow. So you make that jump, and what changed from what you were doing to what that position was? Was it a significant change, or was it very much the same thing you were doing, just a full-time position?
No, it was pretty significant. Okay. It was similar in the only thing that was similar was the type of unit that I was in. Mm-hmm. We were doing signal work, so setting up large area networks and satellites and stuff like that to support our higher headquarters.
Yeah.
But the piece that I didn't understand and the stuff that I had to learn was all of the people management and the operations management and the pay and the training and the how do you get people to schools and and you've got 3 people that are doing the job Monday through Friday, and then you come in, you got your guys that come in on the weekend, and then you have a full unit there. So the guard does in 2 to 3 days what active duty does in 30 days.
Wow.
And being the one that's behind all of that, setting it up, making sure that, ammunition is forecasted, making sure that stuff is picked up, making sure, all of the stuff, I think really shaped who I am and brought out what what some of my gifts are.
And I think a cool part about that is like you do a lot of leadership work now. Is that the moment in your life or moment in time where you really kind of were like you were just saying, like you kind of think you found your niche? And what was the biggest lesson at first? Because you're talking logistical, operational, all these different things you have to learn. Did it feel like second nature to you? Like this is something you feel like you should have been doing the whole time? Or was it like a mountain that you had to climb?
I wouldn't say that it was a mountain. I was able to use the knowledge that I had from the IT world, and like I've always been pretty tech savvy, so I was able to use a lot of that knowledge to automate and streamline a lot of the new work that I had to do. But the hardest part was you're now institutionalized every day. So you wear a uniform every day. You have a hierarchy of, a chain of command rather. You have people that you have to report to. And if someone says, hey, you're going to Fort Bliss for however many days, then you're going to Fort Bliss for however many days, and it doesn't really matter what you've got going on. So not having control of your schedule was one of the harder pieces. And that's what really, wore on my family as well, because, for the most part I was here, but within the first 2 years of me coming on full time, I spent 6 months in Georgia and another month away in Arkansas.
Wow.
In that first year. And at the time my kids were, I think, that was 2006, so they were like 6 and 7.
Wow.
So it was definitely a challenge, but the great part about it though is it was also an opportunity. And there's stuff that I've learned and that I learned through that whole process, because I was divorced and remarried, and so we had a blended family. I was still having to take my daughter to school. We had to work through when I was going to see my daughter whenever I was working in Georgia for, that 6 months. So I would drive back and forth every weekend. But we come up with this idea of shared calendars, and it was very new, and, not a lot of people had done it, but, that's stuff now that I recommend to blended families all the time. Like, dude, create your kid a calendar and let them see it, and they know what's going on, and they know what to expect. And then mom and dad can see it, and then stepmom, stepdad can see it. Like, everybody can see it. But if it wouldn't have been for any of that, like, I never would even have that little nugget to give to anybody.
So, and that's a part of the like the stuff like I was saying before, the stuff you do now is that leadership, that teaching people how not only to be successful, but to communicate better and to be overall a better leader and a better person. Without those little nuggets that you've learned and how to implement in your own personal life, do you think that, and we'll talk about 29 sides here in a minute, do you think any of the stuff that you do right now would be possible? Because, I mean, when you talk about communication is everyday life. Like, we communicate even though we don't think we're communicating. Like, I think it's 70-30 as far as verbal and nonverbal. But when you're talking of communications of multiple people and the logistics and operational, all the stuff that you learned in the service, do you think without that knowledge that you would be able to be as successful as you are right now with all the stuff you're doing?
Well, first we'd have to define success.
100%.
But no, I don't think that I would. There's a lot of, I didn't do a lot of things right. But I was humble enough to back up and say, hey, I didn't do that right.
Which is such a hard thing to do.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. And then to take the time to figure out, how can I be a better leader? How can I take care of my soldiers better? How can I give them what they need in a way that they appreciate, but it also still fulfills the mission?
Yeah.
You know, because you can't coddle them, right?
Yeah.
You know, but I think start with why. Like, that's one of the big things that, you know, I took away from, I read a book, I forget, Simon Saget, however you say his name. You'll have to look it up, edit it in, whatever.
We'll put the book here.
Yeah. But it's start with why.
Yeah.
And it talks about, and it's how you get people to buy into whatever your mission is. So I would always use the analogy, you know, hey, I need you to go outside and move this sand pit from this parking spot to that parking spot, but I need you to do it with a wooden spoon. And they're like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, go, take off. And they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, I know. But then if you flip the script, right, and I start with why, and I say, hey, we got intel that there's an IED at the bottom of this sand pit that's armed. I need you to go outside because we're going to have to disarm it. So I need you to go outside and move the sand with a wooden spoon from this parking spot to this parking spot. Now all of a sudden it's a completely different context.
And there are absolutely no questions being asked.
But they understand the why and they understand the mission. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, you know, starting with why is always, I feel like, paramount and crucial, especially to get buy-in in teams and leadership and all of that.
Do you have, and we're about to jump forward to what you do now, do you have any regrets in your time in the service? And anything you would, and again, regrets is a big term, and it's like a pretty vast, because obviously there's, you know, I wish I would have learned this and that, and I would have done this and that, whatever, like the little minor regrets. But is there any like big regrets that you have in the service that you were like, man, if I would go back, I would maybe have not taken an opportunity, or, you know, I'm not speaking for you, but, you know, whatever that looks like. Do you have any regrets?
Regrets, no. Are there things that I would do differently? Yes. At the end of the day, nothing is that important on this side of the ocean.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of time worrying about whether my superiors were going to be happy with the report that I submitted, or whether it was on time 100% of the time, or, you know, I'd work, you know, get up in the morning, drive to Belmont, drop my daughter off, drive to High Point, work the day, drive back to Belmont, pick my daughter up, come back home, do dinner and everything else, and then get my laptop back out and work for another hour, hour and a half. And if I had it to do over again, absolutely, that's not how it would go down. I would work when I was at work, and be home when I was at home. And I learned that way later in my career, and it served me well, but I wish I would have learned it a lot sooner.
And that's, so my dad was an entrepreneur, and not to correlate the service and that, but exactly what you just said was such a big struggle in my household, and I got to see that firsthand, which is kind of ironic because now it's something I also struggle with, because I love what I do. I think there's a difference as far as, like, you know, in the service, like, it's more of like a call.
Sure.
Like a call that, like, okay, like, I'm serving the country, like, this has to get done. You know, I'm lucky and blessed enough that I get to do what I love, and now you're in that position now where you're doing the stuff that you love to do. But it's so interesting to, like, as a man, as like someone who, like, now you have kids and all this stuff. It's like time is this precious thing that you never get back.
Sure.
But it is so hard to manage. It's like a million different things are going on, but it's all happening so fast. And there's just times where you just like, can this just stop? Can we just like hit the pause button for like 2 minutes?
Yeah.
How was your relationship with time then? And how did it change, and what is it like now?
Intentional. I set some intentions and I set some boundaries. I got to the point where I knew that I was burnt out from work. And when I finally got the opportunity to move back closer to home, it was, when I'm at work, I will give you everything that I got. And when I leave, I'm leaving for the day. And I'm not answering emails. I'm not doing that. If there's an emergency, obviously, but for the most part, work is at work, home is at home.
When did that switch flip? Like, is there like a story that you remember? Like, maybe it was like something happened at home where it was like, I'm never going to let this happen again. Or was there ever a point that you remember like, okay, I'm flipping the switch because this is more important than that?
I think it's just through my own personal growth and my own journey and understanding what's important and what's not. And, I think anytime you have to face your mortality, you take a hard look at where you've been and what you've done. And, I've had to face my mortality a couple of times. And that doesn't mean like you're getting ready to die. It just means that you're getting ready potentially to go into a situation where you might not come back. Or, I spent 10 days in the hospital with COVID. And then my wife and I had to have a conversation on night 6 of, hey, if something happens and I don't come out of this, because I was, one step away from going on a ventilator. And this is back when if you went on an event, I think it was only like a 20% chance that you came off or something like that.
Wow.
I was one step away from that. And so having to have that conversation, and I was in Durham at the time, and she was back here, so I had no visitors, no nothing. So it just makes you kind of take stock and look at life a little bit differently. It's not to say that I don't like work and that I don't like to do the things that I like to do, but I also try to understand what relationships are important and honor those relationships.
It's just such an interesting thing because, like, until something like that happens, we take all these things for granted. Living in the best country in the world and not, I mean, you've seen it firsthand. Like, you've had to go into war zones, correct?
I wouldn't exactly say war zone. I was in Kuwait. The weird thing, though, was being in a foreign country and seeing how they dealt with the COVID pandemic. And it was so surreal because we were U.S. military. We didn't have to, we weren't on lockdown like the rest of the country were, or the rest of the country was. So we were able to still travel back and forth between the bases and stuff like that. But, if you get on the interstate out here, you're never going to go more than a mile without seeing another car. But, you're on the other side of the world in a Tahoe and there's nobody around and you're just driving through the middle of the desert. And it's just like, this is so weird. But it ultimately it impacts because of all the contracts and stuff like that. So it impacted, chow and when we were going to get chow and how we were going to get chow. It impacted our mission because we had to work with local nationals. So, war zone, no. The opportunity for war to happen, yes.
So I would like to fast forward a little bit. So
okay.
You said 25 years you were in the service?
Yep, 25 and a half-ish.
Ish. So let's fast forward to more recently, this past year. You're transitioning out of the service. What was that like? First off, what went through when did you know that you were transitioning it out, and how did it feel knowing that it was coming to an end?
Let's see, it's 2025 now, so I guess it was 2023 or so. So about 2 years out, I had made a plan and said, if I don't get into Sergeant Major's Academy this go around by this date, then I'm done. And anytime you're in flux or anytime you're in this superposition where you don't know if you're going or coming, that's where like chaos happens and like you feel pulled and like you just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But then once you make a decision, it's like everything clears up And probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done is submit my retirement request.
Wow.
But once it was submitted, it was done. And now I had a direction.
Yeah.
Right? So I started moving down that whole path. And it's got a lot to do with identity and figuring out who Adam is, outside of the uniform. And it's got a lot to do with how do you spend your time. It's got a lot to do with, the Army made me work out for 25 years. Do I still enjoy working out? I don't know. How do I want to grow my hair? Because they've told me for 25 years how to cut my hair. How do I want to present myself to the public whenever I dress? Like, all of this stuff I haven't had to worry about. And now all of a sudden it's like, you get to do whatever you want to. And then it turns into, you get to do whatever you want to. Right? So it's super surreal.
Yeah.
And it's something that doesn't get talked about a lot, but the transition all transitions are hard, regardless.
Yeah.
But the transition out of the military, it can be compared to coming out of prison. Especially for the I call them big army, the big army active duty folks, where that's all they know.
Yeah.
Luckily, being National Guard, I lived within the community. I still was able to help and coach ball and, live in the, local community. So it's not like I was shielded from the rest of the world, but a lot of these active duty folks, they come out and all they know is how to Army.
How hard, so for you it was a little easier than it was for like a more heavily involved, I'm not saying that you weren't heavily involved, but like someone who, like you said, is like a natural Army person, like that's all they know. Like, can you speak on just from your perspective, what was the hardest part of transitioning out? Because again, like you're saying, it's ABC. Like, you in the Army, you know what you're doing every day. You have the list of things you got to get done. Like, it's, make your bed, do this. You know what uniform you're wearing to work. You know the haircut you're getting. You know you're working out. All these things that are just in a list, if you will,
Yep.
of this is getting done today, regardless of how I feel, regardless of if it's sunny, if it's rainy, if it's a Monday or a Sunday. Like, this is getting done. What is that adjustment like coming out and into the civilian world? How hard is that adjustment? And if you can explain to people that adjustment for you, from your perspective.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
There's anxiety. Am I going to be enough? Am I going to be, able to fit in to normal society?
Yeah.
There is panic and panic attacks that come along with it. There is, even family dynamics change. Especially on the retirement side of it, because I'm fortunate now and I don't have to work, which gives me a lot more time, but what do I do with that time? And then how much of that time is spoken for by my spouse? Because I've left her for the last 25 years just kind of flapping in the wind. Sometimes she's holding the fort down. Sometimes I'm home doing and helping and doing all the things. And it just very fluid, but now it's my personal life is much more structured now versus my professional life. So it's almost like it's a 180 where before, personally, I was just kind of flapping in the wind and, going by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
And now that's kind of where I'm at professionally and, figuring out what do I really want to do. So that's just led me to a lot of reflection and, figuring out what my absolute purpose is for me. And I don't know if I would, obviously we're the sum of our parts.
Yeah.
But coming out of that,
Yeah.
it leaves you in a place of unknown. And that can be a scary place. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did, and I think the thing is that it's all about perspective, because I don't know what that's like. The closest thing I can relate that to was school. like we didn't have like a uniform per se, but like you go there, you have to, you know what's getting done that day. You're going to math, you're going to English, you're going to social studies, you're going to lunch, you're going to gym, you're going to whatever. Like, it's the closest thing I can relate to because I have no experience in the Army and I have not served the country. So again, thank you for your service to the country.
Appreciate it.
Real quick, I have 2 rapid fire questions, and then I want to kind of go into where you're at now.
Okay.
What is the thing you miss the most about the Army?
Okay.
And what is the thing you miss the least about being in the service?
The thing I miss the most is the people. Incredible friendships, incredible relationships that'll last a lifetime. And I still keep in touch with guys, but it's not the same as when you work with them every day. The thing that I will miss the least, someone else managing my time.
Once you get that ability to, and I'm in this spot right now because I had to go back recently to a full-time job, but like the past year I've been able to do all my stuff myself, and I became pretty successful at it. It is so hard to be like, well, we're going back. The paycheck's nice. Don't get me wrong, but
sure.
It's hard to give up that control of, okay, well now 40 to 50 hours a week or however many hours a week are going to this thing that's not furthering my business or my agenda, if you will.
Right.
But it's so crazy how that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's wild. But now let's get to you today. So you get out of the service, and you did a transitional period and kind of led you into one of the million things that you do right now, which is you help out with HKY for vets.
Right.
So if we could talk about that, and then I would love to get into 29 Sides and the leadership aspect and the purpose and all that.
Okay. So the Department of Defense came out with a program because they understood that people were struggling in transition. So it's called DoD Skills Bridge. And basically what happens is they allow you to go work in the civilian sector for, somewhere between 3 and 6 months to see what it's like, to help get adjusted. And during that time, you still get a paycheck from Uncle Sam. So it's free labor for wherever you work. And because of some connections that I have made and, I'll just say it, thanks Cameron. My sister-in-law.
Shout out Cameron Brixby, who was also on an episode.
Yep. So she introduced me to some folks, and that led me to deciding to do my skills bridge with HKY for Vets, which helps transitioning service members on the professional side. So whether it's resume writing or whether it's, and it's not saying that I'm going to write your resume for you, but I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have a real conversation with you and, where are you at? And like, what do you need? What do you want? And try to go a little bit deeper than just, well, I need a job. Well, why do you need a job? Because I don't want to play video games anymore. Okay, so the kind of job you need is different than the kind of job because I need to put food on my table because I don't have enough to eat.
Yeah. 2
completely different situations, right?
For sure.
So it allows me to do a lot of one-on-one interviews and, I kind of put a coaching spin on it and absolutely love it.
And then, real quick, so it super interesting how you went from a transitioning veteran yourself to now where you are in a position to help transitioning veterans. How many in your role since you've been there? How many people you think you've come across, helped in a certain way? If you had to put a number on it.
It's hard to put a number on it.
Right.
I would say I've probably impacted 15, 20, 25.
That's awesome.
I would say that some of the impacts were far greater than some of the others. Mm-hmm. I know for a fact that there's people that are seeking mental health services that weren't before. So, I mean, do with that what you want to.
It's just an awesome impact to have. Like coming from someone who's in that, like, and you can connect with them on so much of a deeper level than like I don't want to say the word corporate, but like a corporate person being in that position because
Sure.
you have that experience of like, dude, I was there. I was in your shoes. Like you can, I feel like there's like a foundation of like mutual understanding or mutual respect.
Sure.
Because maybe you guys didn't do the same thing, but you got understood like the foundation of being a service member. And obviously
Absolutely.
there's different avenues of that. But for you, was it easier transitioning? Like, do you think it would have been a harder transition if you would have went into, again, I hate the word corporate, but like a corporate standard job? And do you think that being in a position where you're also able to help veterans who some were probably in the same shoes that you were, do you think that helped you? Or do you think maybe a corporate job could have helped with the transition or hurt the transition? If that makes any sense.
I'm not certain that the corporate world is for me. And it goes back to, I think the ultimate goal was indiscriminate time, right? Being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it, and for the reasons that you want to do it.
Yeah.
Now, you have to back all that up with resources and stuff like that to get there. But, if you have to ask your boss for a day off, you don't have indiscriminate time.
Facts.
So I discovered that was what I wanted. So I started to plant seeds to get me there. And then I also discovered, and I didn't realize that while I was serving, but I have a service heart, and I had ran away from that for forever. But now I work with 3 different nonprofits, and all 3 of them have to do with, serving the veteran community.
It's such a beautiful thing,
And it
isn't
just
it?
kind of happened, and it's like, and I genuinely, truly, I stay busier now than I did whenever I, worked every day.
And I can vouch. You showed me your calendar when we had the conversation last week, and it was just filled up with stuff. Like, I just think it's awesome, man. Like, it's so cool that you were able to use the skills that you got in the service. And obviously, it seems like you just kind of had a natural calling to leadership just from the conversations we've had. But it's so cool. And I would really love to segue into 29 Sides because I know that is your true calling right there, is to help people with leadership. Because even in the conversation, how long did we talk at the coffee shop? 30 minutes, 45 minutes?
Yeah, something like that.
I feel like just in that conversation, it was so thought provoking to be like, man, what is my why? Why do I do this? Like, and I thought I knew, but like I told you, and then you were like, man, let's go deeper than that. Let's go to the core, like the foundation, like that are questions that I've just never been asked before. So I think it's super cool that you served the country. Again, I'm gonna say thank you a million times.
I'll say you're welcome a million times.
Because our freedom is, again, we live in the greatest country in the world. Nobody could tell me any differently. Anyway, just taking those skills that you learned, that you also had kind of a natural ability already, they kind of just amplified, and you kind of got to get that firsthand experience in leadership. So let's talk about 29 Sides. Like, first off, why the name 29 Sides?
So 29 Sides it was an accident. It really was. So if I back up a little bit, I used to own Newton Conover CrossFit, and I still had a domain that was sitting out there. And part of the work that I was doing at HKY for Vets was swapping them over from Google to the Microsoft 365 environment. So I needed to test that. So that way I didn't screw it up, because I was bringing the stuff into, it wasn't a new instance I was bringing it into. I said all that to say I had to set up a new domain. So in setting up the new domain, I was like, well, what can I call it? And I was like, I'll call it 29 Sides. And so 29 is represented, that's mine and my wife's number, right? Like, I don't know if all couples have it, but like, that's our number. We met on the 29th. We got married on the 29th. Like, that's just our number, right? And then obviously Sides is my last name. But then it's also a play on words, because in problem solving or coaching or whatever it is that I'm doing, there's always more than one way to get to the solution. So it just kind of stuck. So I had the domain, and then I was like, well, actually, that kind of works. And it doesn't sound that crazy. So, like, what does it look like if I turn it into a business?
Yeah.
So I went ahead and, set the stuff up so that way I was, could act as a business, and get tax benefits and all the stuff. I feel like everyone should, in my opinion.
Yeah. Literally a cheat code.
For sure, right? So, and I still don't know 100% what I'm doing with it, but I have the mechanisms in place that give me the freedom to, do I want to do contract work and work with other organizations? Do I want to take on clients and be like a personal trusted advisor? Do I want to do, I've picked up a couple of certifications since I've left the military. I'm now a CEPA, so Certified Exit Planning Advisor. I'm also certified in the 6 Types of Working Genius, which is a personality-driven productivity tool that helps teams, really maximize their output.
So needless to say, you're in an amazing spot because it's just beginning, and there are so many avenues that you can go down. So, you asked me the question. I'm going to ask you the question. What's your purpose behind 29 Sides? Like, if there could be, I don't want to say a goal, but if there could be like, this is the specialty, this is what I want to focus on. Is it helping small business owners become bigger and better than they are? Is it just helping the everyday person become the best father, the best husband, the best person that they could become? Like, if there was a mission behind 29 Sides, what would you want it to be? And I think the cool thing about it, and a lot of people get discouraged where they're like, oh, I'm at the beginning of it. And that's a great place to be.
For sure.
Because you can mold and adapt and become whatever you want to be. That's the best place to be. So what do you feel like is your strong suit, and what would you want 29 Sides to become?
So my purpose is I make extraordinary things happen through inspiring change, challenging the status quo, organizing chaos, and helping great people with great ideas. When I'm doing that, I'm in my flow, and I feel like I am doing what I'm called to do. Whether that is for a small business, whether that is for a individual, whether that's for a veteran, whether it's for a veteran organization, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because that's what fuels me, right? And that's what gives me energy. I love the big ideas, and I like helping people get to their why and figure that piece out. I recently, it's been on my heart. Like, I feel like I have the ability to help men do life. Kind of from a life coaching perspective, but more from a trusted agent perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it. I still haven't figured it out. But it's the stuff like, I'm going to tell you stuff that your best friend's not going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you stuff that your wife's not going to tell you.
Yeah. The stuff that is hard to hear, but you need to hear it to become a better person at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And life coaching is like such a broad term. And I definitely want to have a life coach on this podcast because I would love to go in depth on that. But I feel like it's such a broad word because life is this vast thing. Everyone goes through different periods of their life at all times.
Yeah.
There could be 10 men in a room or 10 women or 10 people in general in a room, all going through different stages of life. And it's like, it's just and I love that you said you don't want to go down the life coaching route because I feel like with life coaching, kind of get stuck in like one avenue.
Sure.
But with like you, it's more of like development because you can always develop and always be better regardless. But it's super interesting because, and I love the fact that like you're talking about men's growth and men's development because it's like a weird, speaking as a guy, it's like this weird thing where it's like some people are like, well, men get put on pedestals and all this and that, and there's different perspectives on it, but it's so weird when like you have those conversations with your best friend or and you can tell like they want to say something,
Yeah.
but they don't say it.
Yep.
So it's like, it's also weird to have those conversations. And I was having a conversation last night with someone, and they want to do something different, but there's like a group. And I was like, man, just have the conversation.
Yeah.
It's like people want to shy away from those difficult conversations. And this is great for life with family or spouses or just everyday life. What would you say to someone who is in a point where they have to have a difficult conversation, but maybe they don't want to have it? Is there any advice you give to someone on a difficult conversation, or like tips and tricks? I know it's like a little cliche, but just something that recently happened.
Yeah, so you have to check yourself first and understand where you're at and why do you even want to have the conversation. So, identify what the problem is or what the topic is, right?
Yeah.
Identify how you feel about that and why you feel the way that you feel about it and your belief system behind how you feel about it, right? And you do all that before you ever even broach the topic of a conversation. Like before you ever even say, hey, Lenny, I'd like to sit down and have a conversation with you, and it might be a tough conversation, right? And then when you do sit down with them, like, give them the facts, put everything up front. If it's a conflict or something, ask for reasonable change. If they are unable to give you that reasonable change, tell them what the consequences are going to be. And you do it all from a place of love and compassion, because everyone's voice is important. And everyone's, like, you have just as much right to your voice as I have to my voice and my thoughts and your thoughts and everything else. But being able to share and communicate, even if it's a difficult topic, shouldn't make me feel any less because I feel or think a certain way or we don't agree about something. So I think the biggest thing is understanding yourself and what's your self-awareness around what it is that you want to talk about.
It's so crazy how you made that sound so easy, but to most people, that is a very difficult thing to do. Have you ever thought about that?
It's hard.
Yeah.
I can do it with most people. Me and my wife struggle with it. And she'll tell you. But it's the ability to be vulnerable, and for the people that can hurt us the most, those are the ones that we tend to not be as vulnerable with because they have the ability to wreck our world.
That's very true. That's very true. There was something else I was going to ask, and it just completely slipped my mind as we were going. Let me ask you this. If you could go back in time, when you first enlisted, and knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have told your younger self?
It's funny that you asked that. I've been talking to my younger self a lot lately. And the message is, it's okay. And you're loved, and I love you. And my younger self is like, you do? And I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, why wouldn't I love you? Yeah. And, what has happened that you would think that your older self wouldn't love you? And just that reaffirming, and that's like one of the first things that I do every morning when I wake up now, and it sounds almost ridiculous, but I'm like, hey, buddy, how you doing? And it's me talking to my younger self, because past is what makes future, and, if you can influence the past from this spot, then it's only going to make my future better, right? So if you think of like Back to the Future or something like that, so it's me talking, and I feel like my younger self hears it. Maybe they hear it, maybe they don't. Think about the movie Interstellar at the very end. whenever the dude's in the 4D time and space, and he's talking to Murph, and he's trying to tell himself to not go. Don't go, don't go, don't go. But he couldn't get the message across, right? So, but putting that energy out there to my, little boy self, and it's like, dude, you're loved. Like, you are enough. You are who you are, and it's okay. Like, be yourself. And just through that and the ability to love yourself, I think it's hard for a lot of people, and especially when you start talking to, this isn't the conversation that Lenny and Adam expected to have today on a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's truly not, but because there's a vulnerability that men oftentimes just aren't willing to go there with just anybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's where my calling for, working with men to help them on their journey, their life journey, and that's whether it's spiritual or financial or whatever, right? I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I know people. And I can make recommendations and be like, hey, go talk to this guy if you need to talk to somebody about finance. You need a lawyer, go talk to this person. You need some insurance, call Cameron. But all of that stuff, like I feel like I have a natural knack for, and it's all through experience. And it's not that I did everything right, because I did not do everything right, nowhere close to it. But I'll say again, we're the sum of all of our parts. So there's no way, had I not done all of the other things that I've done, that you and I would even be having this conversation today.
I think, and you touched on a really good topic, and I honestly only have a couple more questions to ask, but that kind of just triggered something. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I'm very, I'm not in the perfect shape. I'm not where I want to be, but I always had this thing of loving myself and having the most confidence possible and just being a happy person. And someone came up to me a couple weeks ago and was like, how are you so confident? How are you, like, able to love yourself? Like, not in a malicious way, but, like, genuinely asking, because they were in a point of struggling. And I was like, you just got to love yourself regardless. You got to, even if you're unhappy, knowing that, like, even if you're unhappy at the core, like, obviously, I don't want to be big or, or a bigger person. But like you said, we're some of all of our parts. It's like, you got to just love what you got to, the best advice I ever heard was, you got to go with what you got, and what you got right now, you got to love yourself for. Change what you want to change going forward and just be a better version of who you are yesterday and what you are tomorrow. What's the saying? 1% better. Yeah. And you can be 365% better if you just do that 1% every day for the whole year. And I was talking to him, and I was just like, there's just this inept ability for me. I just love myself, regardless of, I was 100 pounds less and I've been 100 pounds more. Like, I'm at the point now where I've seen both of those spectrums, and throughout all of it, I've loved myself. And if that's always at the core, regardless of what's going on in life, it's so hard to explain to people, to be like, you can get a lot accomplished if A, you're confident, and B, you love yourself. Because even like this podcast, it's like, cool, somebody can tell me that they hate it and they think it's the stupidest stuff ever. That's great. Thank you so much for your opinion, because I love myself, I know my purpose, and I'm super confident in doing this. Right. So I think for a lot of people, it's hard. One, because I don't feel like people have found their true purpose. Sometimes, for some people, that's not every aspect. And then two, I feel like people are very hard on themselves. So is there anything that you could say to somebody, again, I hate to put the word tips and tricks out there, to maybe put them on the right steps to be able to look at themselves in the mirror and be like, you know what? I see a lot of flaws, but I love the person I'm looking at.
You have to learn how to be self-aware. Like, that's the first step. And learning how to observe your thoughts and feelings and take them at face value, because your thoughts and your feelings are not you. They're simply thoughts and feelings that belong to your ego. And we could go down a huge rabbit hole right here.
That's a whole nother episode.
And it really is. But at the end of the day, while I have my earthly purpose that I spoke about earlier, I think we all have a purpose, a divine purpose, and that purpose is to experience and to love. And I can go back and talk about how I got there, but it was many years worth of sitting and thinking and reading and learning. But at the end of the day, I truly think that that's what we're called to do, by the God, the universe, wherever you want to call it. But it's to experience and to love. So even when you're in the darkest of darks and the lowest of lows, you can find comfort in you are fulfilling your divine purpose simply through the experience that you're going through to allow God and the universe to experience itself.
That was so well put together. It's literally almost like you're speaking from a script. It's the wildest thing. I think I just have two last questions, but it's so cool. And I talked to you literally right before the podcast because you're like, edit this stuff out. And I'm like, you're going to make way more mistakes. I mean, I'm going to make way more mistakes than you are. And you're literally speaking so perfectly. So I just wanted to compliment you on that. Because it happens all the time. Everyone's like, I'm so nervous. And then they get on and they just start spitting heat, absolute fire, just giving the best quotes of their life. And I'm like, okay, so obviously you're the celebrity here. So last two things for you. For somebody who's maybe never done work with, a leadership developer, you're building business leaders. You're building better people with the work that you do. And not only for 29 Sides, but also for HKY for Vets, because you're bringing people in who have just served the country and you are helping them become better civilians. So really in both aspects of what you do, you are helping people become better. Now, whether that's transitioning from service life to civilian life, or just genuinely helping people become better leaders, better business owners, better partners, better just people in general.
Right, I'm inspiring change and challenging the status quo. That's two of the things that's in my purpose.
He's reading from the script right there. For someone who's never worked with somebody like you before, if you could talk quickly or briefly just on what can they expect and what that process even looks like.
I'll steal a quote from Big Brother, expect the unexpected. I've had some conversations before, and I've actually gotten that. Like, that's not what I expected. And I'm like, well, what did you expect? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's with any coach or with anybody that's trying to make you better, but I genuinely want what's best for your higher self. And I want to push you and inspire you to get to your highest level of awareness, and understand that it's okay. And the mistakes that we've made, they just make us who we are. And at the end of the day, it all had to happen.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't happen, I wouldn't have learned the things that I've learned.
Amen.
If you wouldn't have gone through the hardships that you've went through, you wouldn't have learned the things that you learned. So, and coming to and finding the acceptance of, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I was an alcoholic. It's okay. I've spent how many years on drugs? It's okay. I haven't spent many years on drugs, or any years on drugs.
But just speaking of someone yes, maybe I spend however long doing X, Y, and Z, and I've had these addictions, or I've had these highs, I've had these lows. Being able to put your ego aside and your pride to the side and be like, you know what, I want to become a better person.
Right, because being an alcoholic is not you. It's simply not you. It's your earthly ego self.
Yeah.
It's not to say that ego is bad. Ego keeps us alive. It makes sure that we, it's responsible for fight or flight and responsible for a whole bunch of other things. But learning, it's like I said before, learning how to be that self-aware person so that you can see and understand the emotions and I have a feeling about that. Wow. What is that feeling about?
Yeah.
You know, and not automatically reacting to a particular emotion, because it really ends up serving you very well in relationships, because someone says something to tick you off or trigger you or whatever words you want to use, and you have that split second where you can interrupt it, your thought process, right? Now all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, that's not a trigger for me. I'm triggered, but why am I triggered? And you kind of think through the process, and ultimately you find out, well, I value family, and they just told me that they wanted me to come to work and work over time this weekend.
Yeah.
And I told my boss to go F off. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Because, I mean, that's the split-second heat-of-the-moment decision that you made.
Yeah.
But when you sit back and you reflect on it, it's like, I don't want to work this weekend because I had plans with my family. And I value my family, and I believe that family time is important.
100%.
You know, so if you can interrupt with that thought, maybe the conversation looks like, boss, I understand that we've got tight deadlines and this and that, but I've already made plans with my family. Is there another course of action that we can take and still accomplish whatever it is we're trying to get done?
Yeah.
And that's a completely different conversation than telling him to go fly a kite or do whatever.
And it's go fly kite. Just go fly kite. That's it. See ya. Last question I got for you, and then I would like for you to shout out your social medias, your websites, whichever, and all the stuff that you're a part of, obviously, because you represent more than just 29 Sides and HKY for Vets, and you work with a lot of other programs. So I would love for you to have the ability to shout them out. But before we do that, for anyone watching, we end on a positive note. We try to keep it motivational. Our brand is called Lifting Love.
Sure.
For anyone watching this right now, maybe they're in a bad spot, maybe they're in a tough spot, maybe they're in a rough spot, and they're just figuring out life, or maybe they want to take that next step, but they don't know what to do. For anyone watching this, what's the best piece of advice that you can give them about business, about life in general? What's the best piece of advice you give to someone watching this right now?
If you're in a position that you don't know what to do, first and foremost, be still and listen. And understand that in the being still, you are taking action. Because action cures fear. Because more than likely, not everybody, but more than likely, whatever decision point you're stuck between, it's a fear-based decision. So being still and listening means you're taking action. And then make the decision. As scary as it might be, make the decision. Because it's just like a bow and arrow, right? If I pull it back and I'm sitting here, it ain't doing nothing until I let go. So as soon as I let go, that arrow is flying, and it's got momentum and everything else is going with it. But if I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't know if I can let go, I don't know if I can let go, I don't know if I can let go, then I'm paralyzed.
Yeah.
Right? So and it's the same thing that I tell my kids whenever they call me. They're older now. They're 23, they'll be 24 in May.
Yeah.
Dad, I got this going on. Be still.
That's awesome.
Sit with it. Like, marinate on it, meditate on it, pray on it. Whatever words you want to use and however your faith works for you, but I really like, if you're in that spot right this second, find comfort in knowing that being still is taking action.
So good. Then the last thing, I know you're not just 29 Sides and HKY for Vets. You do kind of a lot. I know you work with multiple nonprofits. Please shout all this stuff out. Social media, where can people find you? Where can people follow you? How can people support you? And then if you want to mention also the other organizations that you work with, please do so.
Sure. So I don't have a website because I haven't decided what's going to go on it yet. I have my personal Facebook, and I'm sure we'll link it in the video. I'm on LinkedIn, and we'll link that in the video. Some of the work that I do, I work with Camp Centurion. It's a veterans home in Bessemer City in Gaston County. And we're committed to providing supportive housing and access to essential resources for veterans, and facilitate their reintegration into the community. So I'm the treasurer on their board down there. I also work with the organization Fairways for Warriors, where our mission is to help curb the 22 a day suicide pandemic for combat veterans, and we do that through golf and camaraderie, and we have other resources that are available should we need them. But fairwaysforwarriors.org, and then hkyforvets.org. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Adamsize at 29size.com.
Boom. So, first and foremost, again, I know I've said it like 5 times this episode. Thank you so much for your service and all that you do, not just because you've served the country, but, I mean, you're still serving the country, helping people in the service come out and transition into civilian life. So thank you for all the work you do. Thank you so much for your time today. Shout out to Cameron one more time for making this episode happen. And thank you one more time to Lake Hickory Pub and Marina, where Lake and Life meet, for helping us by letting us record here, and also just being the presenting sponsor. So thank you to them. But until next time, this was another Lifting Love podcast. Until next time, lift love, crochet. We out.